that this book of God makes us to accept Jesus Christ, that he was one of the mightiest messengers of God. We are made to believe that he was the Messiah. Messiah, translated Christ. That he was born miraculously, without any male intervention, which many modern day Christians don't believe today. Including the Anglican bishops. More than 50% of the Anglican bishops in England, they do not believe in the miraculous birth of Jesus. We Muslims, we believe. Without any arguments from the Christians, we accept that he was born miraculously, without any male intervention. We believe that he gave life to the dead by God's permission, and he healed those born blind and the lepers by God's permission, on the authority of this book. No arguments. The Muslim will never argue with you with regards to these things. So no, we believe, we believe, we believe, we believe. Yes, sir.
What about Christ's resurrection as the
Yes. So now, the question is, what about Christ's resurrection? Meaning death and resurrection. That he died and he was resurrected. Now here is a point of difference. The point of real difference is the divinity. But now, this is secondary. But I have to deal with it. You asked the question. What about the resurrection? The Quran says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ, with regards to that point, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ, that they didn't kill him and they didn't crucify him. وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ, but it was made to appear to them so. That is what they thought they had done. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ لَفِي شَقٍّ مِّنْهُمْ, and those who dispute therein are full of doubts. مَا لَهُمْ بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ, they have no certain knowledge. إِلَّا اتِّبَاعَ الظَّنِّ, they have only conjecture to follow. وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا, for a surety they killed him not. But now comes the problem. The problem is, then naturally the Christians said, look, but my book says so. It's in my Bible. Am I right, sir? He said, look, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they all testify that Christ was crucified and he rose again on the third day, and he was taken up into heaven. So now the Muslims said, look, but my book says this. So you said, look, your book is false. Then I say, your book is false. No, there is no way. You see, that way, it's like a tug of war. We are going to start throwing mud at each other. No, we are not to do that. We say, now let us see now what makes us to think the way we are thinking. On the first hand, we say, because God says so. But he said, look, this is not the book of God. Where did you get it? He said, well, Muhammad was inspired. He said, look, we don't accept that. So therefore, my book, the Quran, tells me to ask you for your proof. The book says, anybody makes any claim, you ask him for his proof. Kul hatu burhanakum. That's what the Quran says. You produce your proof. So you produced it. The Bible, in 2,000 different languages. English, Afrikaans, Zulu, Urdu, Arabic, 2,000 different languages there. Your proof. So I said, let's have a look at it. So when I read it, I'm going to just give you an example. That I'm reading your book in your language. English is a foreign language to me. I'm an Indian, born in India. You see, I acquired this English from your people. I learned this language and I'm now sharing it with you, your language. So I said, now I'm reading the Bible in English. And it's giving me an idea exact opposite of what you're telling me. I'm going to present it to you, sir. He said, you see, Jesus, when he returned to that upper room, where they had the Last Supper, after his alleged crucifixion, you know the scene. In Luke chapter 24 we read that he returns to that upper room and he wishes his disciples in Hebrew, Shalom Alaikum. We Muslims say Salam Alaikum, same, meaning the same thing, peace be unto you, Frida Fayala. And when he said peace be unto you, his disciples were terrified. So I'm asking, why were they terrified? Because if you meet your long-lost master, your uncle, your grandfather, the Arab and the Jew, he embraces one another, he kisses one another. Instead of doing that, the disciples of Jesus were terrified. So I'm asking, why were they terrified? So the learned man tells me that Luke chapter 24 verse 36, he says that they were frightened because they thought he was a spirit. I'm quoting, they thought he was a spirit. So I'm asking, why did they think he's a spirit? Did he look like a spirit? And everybody says no. Then why should they think the man is a spirit when he didn't look like a spirit? Puzzled. So I will tell you, sir, the reason. I said, you see, the disciples of Jesus, they had heard from hearsay people talking that the master was hanged on the cross. They had heard from hearsay people talking that he had given up the ghost. In other words, the spirit had come out, he had died. They had heard from hearsay people talking that he's not dead and buried for 3 days. Because Mark chapter 14 verse 50, he tells us that at the most critical juncture in the life of Jesus, all his disciples forsook him and fled. All. We had Al-Malhum, Farlat and Khaflaq. All forsook him and they fled. So I'm asking, is it true? The Bible says they all forsook him and they fled. That means they were not there. Their knowledge was from hearsay, people talking. So on hearsay knowledge, if you know about a man who is dead and buried for 3 days, you expect him to be stinking in his grave after 3 days. So when you see such a person, naturally you are terrified. You are terrified. So Jesus wants to assure them that is not what they are thinking. So he says, and I'm quoting, he says, behold my hands and my feet. Have a look at my hands and my feet, that it is I, myself. I am the same fellow man. Damn fools, what are you afraid of me for? What's wrong with you? Handle me and see. Handle me and see. For a spirit has no flesh and bones as you see me have. A spirit means any spirit would have no flesh and bones as you see me have. So, if I got flesh and bones, in that case, I'm not a spirit, I'm not a ghost, I'm not a spook. In your language, what does it mean? Want vlees en bene soos julle sien dat ek het nie. So if I got flesh and bene, then I'm not what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm a spirit, a ghost, resurrected. I'm not that. And they felt him, I'm reading, and believed not for joy, because they were overjoyed. Naturally, anticlimax. They thought the man was dead and buried, he's gone, but he's here. And they felt him and they believed not for joy and wondered. What happened, man? So to assure them further, he said, have you here any meat, something to eat? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and a honeycomb. And he took it and he ate in the very sight to prove what? There is a ghost, there's a spirit, there's a spook. What is he trying to prove? So he said, you see, sir, this is programming. We all get brainwashed. We all get brainwashed from childhood into certain beliefs, and we are not reading what's there, we are reading what's already programmed in our head. We read something and we understand something else. He said, a spirit has no flesh and bone, as you see me have. So he said, look, the man is telling you, I'm not what you're thinking. You think I was resurrected from the dead. I'm not that, because the resurrected bodies get spiritualized. Who says so? I said, Jesus. Who says so? I said, Paul. Who says so? I said, everybody. Once you are resurrected, it won't be this. It won't be this body. It's a body of another kind. It's a spiritual thing. So Jesus says, I'm not that. And this is not a resurrected body. It's the same body. And the man is ever in hiding. He never comes out into the open. So he said, now when we read all this, we say, you see, this is programming. We all get programmed. I don't say I'm not programmed. But we Muslims say, look, come reprogram us. Tell us in your language, sir, when the man says, want nie vlees en bene soos julle sien dat ek het nie. Tell me now that in your language, the Afrikaner, that it means the spirit has flesh and bones. In English, the spirit has no flesh and bones, as you see me have. Tell me that in your language, it also means the spirit has flesh and bones. Tell me. I'm prepared to listen to you. It's your language. He says, that's your interpretation. I say, give me yours, sir, and believe me. There isn't a Christian who can give me his interpretation on a spirit has no flesh and bones. The spirit has no flesh and bones. What interpretation you want? This is basic, simple English. But of course, you see, it goes against our grain. From childhood, you believe that Christ died for your sins, and now I say, look, the man is telling you it's not what you're thinking. I know it's a shock. But now we must be big enough to say, now let's see now what makes you to think the way you are thinking and the talk that we are talking. Let us see if we can find some common grounds on which we can progress further.